Alrighty, everyone. This is meteorologist Timmy Albertson. For tonight's weather chat, it is Friday night, so we'll try to make this one a little bit on the quick side. The main thing we're going to do is take a look at that low pressure system that we've been watching the past couple of days as it now makes its way through not only the Great Lakes but into New England, where it will probably intensify even more so as we head into this weekend. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk really quickly about Philippe, Tropical Storm Philippe. It's no longer tropical. As a matter of fact, it's almost kind of, I don't want to say falling apart, but it's just so really unorganized right now. And it's likely just going to kind of continue to stay that way as it tracks its way not only through Bermuda, but into the parts of the North Atlantic before it eventually just gets absorbed into the system that we're going to be talking about. So again, Philippe not expected to become anything strong at this point. Again, just kind of a very ragged low pressure system right now. So let's go ahead and flip over the screen here really quickly, take a look at the latest weather map. Here's what we got going on. If you remember yesterday, we were taking a look at an area of low pressure that was located over Western Ontario, and it was dragging a cold front through. Well, that cold front has now made its way all the way over into parts of eastern Ohio and into western Pennsylvania. We got this little extra secondary front kind of swinging around the backside here. That's really helping to bring in some much cooler temperatures across the upper Midwest today. A lot of places only made it into the 50s. And we're even seeing places like Illinois in the 50s right now at this time. So again, much cooler air mass. And that little extra push is going to be good news for this low pressure system because it has kind of slowed down just a little bit. But that extra little push that you see there right here, the secondary front here, is going to be enough to really help get that area of low pressure over Ottawa, Ontario, to really begin to intensify. And eventually, we are going to see that system intensify even a little bit more. And then once it absorbs the remnants of Tropical Storm Philippe, well, that's really going to help it to kind of noticeably intensify even more so. All right, let's talk about the life cycle of a low pressure system here really quickly. We will not go into a lot of detail about this, but I think in this case it might be helpful for at least a few little quick diagrams here. So when we talk about areas of low pressure, it's important to know that a lot of them kind of have a similar life cycle with them. And kind of the genesis for most areas of low pressure is when we have a frontal boundary, in this case kind of a stationary front, basically two areas of high pressure with an area of low pressure right in between is kind of the general setup. You have two areas of high pressure, there's going to be lower pressure in between. So really in this type of situation, you have this little stationary front there. And so this kind of diagram up at the top is kind of a three-dimensional view of at least what the air looks like kind of at the lower levels. And the one below you here is your stationary front showing the difference in wind directions. Again, a high pressure to the north with the way the air flows around a high pressure is clockwise, so kind of an easterly wind on the northern part of that front and more of a westerly wind on the southern part of that front. Now, a lot of times in this type of a setup, we're looking for something to kind of disturb that frontal boundary a little bit there. It could be a wave of low pressure. It could sometimes just a wave of low pressure in the upper levels, or it could sometimes just be even a little geographical setup there. So long story short, generally what happens is something gets this disturbed a little bit, and it causes some of that cooler air to begin to move in one direction, and that warmer air begins to move in the other direction. And as a matter of fact, if you know low pressure, well, low pressure is our area where the air is, long story short, converging and then going upwards there. That's at least how it is in the lower levels. So low pressures like to move warm, moist air. It's very easy for them to move, and naturally, well, you move it somewhere, it's got to go somewhere else, and then new air takes its place. So again, we'll spare the upper level explanation for that right now, but at least at the surface, a little bit of a frontal boundary. So once that little disturbance kind of gets itself going, we begin to see the low pressure itself beginning to really begin to develop. That cold front begins to move, the warm front begins to move northwards, at least in the northern hemisphere, and that gives us our classic, low pressure with the cold front and the warm front. I guess obviously it's already there, but you see that a lot of times on weather maps. By this point, low pressures continue to intensify, then eventually that cold front will begin to catch up with the warm front. And that's not good news for a low pressure because it needs that warm, moist air to lift. And so when that happens, what we basically see is the cold air cuts off the inflow of the warmer air, and that gives you that little purple front there on that diagram below. That is an occluded front. When you see that, it means the cold front has now overrun the warm front. And typically at this point, the low pressure will reach its maximum intensity and then kind of begin to weaken, at least at the surface. Now, a lot of times we'll have the upper level low still there, and that upper level low can continue on, and that actually a lot of times helps with future development of low pressures. As a matter of fact, the triple point where that cold front overruns that warm front is oftentimes a good spot for seeing a new area of low pressure developing. So let's go back here to our weather map and take a look what we got going on, and that is we have our low front here. Now you can see it's kind of slowed down a little bit, but we have this new area of low pressure developing. This is the old one. If we were to back up to this time yesterday, you can see how that low pressure was already occluded over Western Ontario. And then it kind of just continued to track its way, weakening up a little bit. See how new center of low pressure develops at the triple point there. We continue to see this guy more or less moving, but now we're starting to get that front to slow down. And now we have the arrival of our good friend, the upper level trough. Take a look at this bad boy here. We've been watching this the past couple of days, and now this trough is really getting itself better defined here. Yesterday was a little bit kind of wider, not quite as pronounced. We had that jet streak move out. That helped to be just enough in the upper levels to kind of get that trough to swing downwards a little bit. Again, kind of glancing over the scientific explanation for right now, just because it's Friday night and we don't want this video to last too long for tonight. But long story short, now we got our upper level trough, and that little wave of low pressure that we see developing will go away. There we go. Is right about there. So again, enough of a disturbance there. So let's take a look here at our good friends over at the Weather Prediction Center here, kind of what they're expecting over the next few days here. We'll go ahead and back this up a little bit. And let's take a look here at what they're expecting with the life cycle here of this new area of low pressure. So there's our cold front. You can see there's our new area of low pressure as we go into the overnight tonight. And then we're going to start seeing extra energy being brought into the system by kind of somewhat the remnants of what was Tropical Storm Philippe. Now, again, most tropical systems meet their end this way. This is not unusual. Sometimes they just kind of taper off or they run into land. But again, long story short, most tropical systems meet their end by running into another system further up toward the north that's not tropical. And that's what we're going to be seeing here. So we got our cold front making its way through the East Coast. Again, probably going to be dealing with some rain showers, especially across New England and parts of the Mid-Atlantic. So some of the football games on the East Coast tomorrow might be a little bit on the rainy side. What happens as we go our way into the evening hours? Well, we're going to be watching as that upper level low begins to track its way into Ontario and eventually into parts of Quebec. Now, again, this is going to be over the course of a few days, but at the surface, you can see that low pressure continues to intensify just off to your right there. You can see there is the remnants of Philippe, and again, it begins to get absorbed into the system, and that's really going to help this low pressure system overall to really intensify. This is going into tomorrow evening. Now, watch here. By the time we go to Sunday morning, you can see how much that thing is intensified there. So again, this whole system kind of begins to take on a whole new intensity. I mean, it's obviously still strong, but you get the idea. Intensifies even a little bit more. Now we got a lot of cooler air rushing its way in on the backside of this here. From what looks to be about here, this is going to be lake-enhanced rain showers across the Great Lakes. So for those of you who are familiar with lake effect snow, we can have lake effect rain if the temperature is too warm. Again, same general properties, just rain instead of snow because of temperature. So that is that. That is going to be as we go into Sunday. What about as we head into Sunday evening? You can see that low pressure really begins to continues to intensify. However, it's reaching its maximum because that cold front has now accelerated way off towards the east. Nonetheless, folks, the upper level low associated with this is going to be hanging around. We're probably going to be seeing cooler temperatures across a lot of the upper Midwest, and even more so into the Great Lakes and Northeast as we go into the start of next work week. So just kind of a little bit of an explanation as to what's going to be going on. I know we kind of glanced over a lot of that as mentioned. It is Friday night, so don't want to make this video too long. We'll probably do a couple of updates over the weekend. We'll probably go over this stuff again, probably in the next weather chat, or even again, if we do another weather chat tomorrow evening, maybe we'll do a special one taking a look at that low pressure system. We'll talk more about it then. But in the meantime, just kind of a quick overview as to what is going on. It is fall, and as we go into fall and winter and even sometimes early spring, we can get some pretty strong low pressures. After all, that's when the temperature gradients are the strongest. Obviously, with the colder temperatures up north, Still warmer temperatures down south. Obviously, it makes a very tight, very noticeable temperature difference. That's why these lows tend to be strongest during the wintertime. All right, with that in mind, everyone, that is a quick little overview of what's going on. I hope you keep tuning into these weather chats. Let us know if you like them or not. But also keep in mind that we do these every weeknight, and we might do one tomorrow talking about this low pressure too. So if we do, make sure you tune in. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a good rest of your evening and have a good weekend and keep enjoying that weather.